So for the session, we will talk about the infectious diseases and their historical course since maybe over 10,000 years ago from the hunting and fishing age. And then followed by the period of stock farming, agriculture approximately 10,000 years ago, and subsequent European medieval period from loosely from 5th to mid-15th century, and the Great Age of Discovery from 15th to maybe mid-17th century, and the Age of Enlightenment and modern times from the 18th century onwards to the present day of approximately 20th century onwards. So for almost the whole of human history, mankind has lived by carrying out these two basic activities of hunting or fishing and gathering edible items as hunter and gatherers. Also, they lived in small groups and they traveled constantly to hunt and forage for food. Source of infection was probably from the nature, maybe from insects, animal, water, soil, so on and so forth, but not from human to human. There was probably infectious diseases, but such isolation of a small group of people would have caused the epidemic to be restricted to any given local population. So the propagation of the epidemic was difficult since the population density was low during that time. And since humans lived in small group and traveled constantly, frequently, they had fewer problems with accumulated waste and contaminated water sources or food. And the change comes approximately 10,000 years ago. Humans started larger and larger communal existence and forming a concentrated community, learning skills to cultivate crops and domesticating animals for a more varied and secure, reliable food sources, and also maybe tool development. These overcrowded communities that evolved after the agricultural revolution often had inadequate means of disposing of garbage and also sewage, which tended to accumulate. And also rodents, insects and fungi were attracted to human settlements due to the accumulated waste. And they provided means for disease propagation. Also, overall, altogether of these accelerated the growth of the vectors. Wastes were also contaminated into water sources, and the usage of pond and adoption of water reservoir cultured the life cycle of mosquito and parasites. Farm life and livestock also brought human into close and constant contact with animals, and likely leading to the first zoonosis, which is a cross-infection between animals and humans. This probably marked the first major step in infectious disease in human history. Okay. And these more densely populated, complex social groupings were believed to be contributing to the emergence and the spread, the origin of epidemic of infectious diseases. So when human had agricultural products or maybe animals or tools, they started to have trade. So that also marked the expansion of the epidemic of infectious diseases. So in terms of what were the causes of infectious disease, what did people understand? The determinants of diseases. As we could see from the example of maybe Gion Matsuri and Todaichi in the previous slides, diseases were considered and associated as with supernatural powers by religious and myth beliefs. But Hippocrates was the first to propose the relationship of diseases to environment. He was the first to look at diseases not as punishment from gods, but as an imbalance of man with the environment. He related diseases to individuals' exposures. He wrote about the spread of diseases by means of airs, water, and places. Okay. And he made the association between climate, diet, and maybe living conditions. He observed that different diseases occurred in different locations, and that malaria and yellow fever commonly occurred in swampy areas. So with his influential theory, it was for many years a commonly held belief that illness was a result of imbalance in body's humors and due to poisonous vapors or the miasma. And maybe this would be interesting to you, that a killer disease like malaria and is suspected to have the evidence of suspected miasmic origins. So malaria is derived from Italian, mal meaning bad, and area is air. So the disease itself has the concept of bad air in its name. Although this was unsophisticated by today's standard, it was the first major step forward for the scientific community, so that to consider the diseases in relation to environment, but not due to superstition powers.